So a few weeks ago, I went to Copenhagen for the Global Fashion Summit. This is an event where fashion leaders are addressing the most pressing environmental and social challenges within our industry. They've been doing this for 17 years, and this is powered by Global Fashion Agenda, a non-profit organization helping transition to a more sustainable future by convening, educating, and mobilizing stakeholders throughout the entire fashion value chain. So what was I doing there? So as a sustainable brand and sustainable speaker, I'm no stranger to this type of conferences, and I've been part of the conversation for many years in London and globally as well. But this was my first time in Copenhagen, and it was a very special edition because we won an award with Anciela. This is our first award. We were one of the Visa Young Creator Award winners this year, and they did it in partnership with Global Fashion Agenda, which was very exciting because it's not only about the award itself, but it's a program where they offer you consultancy and workshops for many months, and that is very valuable as a small brand. So it was beautiful to connect with other like-minded brands. The grand winner was a Dutch brand called Martin, and it was really exciting to see what everyone is working on in this space. So in this video, we'll unpack some of the highlights, the learnings, the takeaways from the summit. So the 2026 theme of the summit was Building Resilient Futures, which I think is a super interesting and hot topic at the moment, very much of the zeitgeist of our time, because adapting in the face of adversity is going to be very key to the future of our industry. As CEO of Global Fashion Agenda, Federica Marchioni said in her welcome speech, adversity has always been the best design brief. The big word throughout the summit was circularity. There was a lot of talk about circularity and how we can close the loop, how we can minimize impact. We saw this at different levels of the value chain. For me, one of the main highlights, and it was really beautiful to see, was Germanier's show, showing the first example of upcycled couture. And this was a result of a partnership with Germanier and LVMH. The entire collection was designed using unsold stock from the group. So this was a gorgeous example of how it can be done at a couture level, those unique pieces for unique clients, and obviously reusing what's already in circulation. There was also a lot of talk about re-commerce. eBay was one of the main partners of the summit this year, so they talked about how they're using AI to leverage consumer data, how they can reduce friction for people to explore and sell and resell on their platform. This was really interesting, and about how they can do smart listings, personalized sourcing. So we'll see how that develops over time. I think another big topic throughout the summit was recycling. I guess it's all about how we can improve the current infrastructure or the lack of infrastructure for feedstocks, and this is at the pre-consumer and also post-consumer stage of the product life cycle. We heard from Turkish company Riyab, who are leading the way in recycling textiles. They also managed to recycle blends like polycotton, which before was impossible. So this was amazing to see everything that's happening at that level. Most importantly, as a designer, how we can design for recyclability. So already before the product is even developed, can we minimize our impact there? Basically design waste out of our products, which I think it was the main takeaway as a designer. Another topic that was very interesting was about finance and sustainability and how the language is changing throughout the CFOs. It was very interesting to hear about Karen using the environmental P&L, profit and loss, to measure the impact essentially that you're having. This is not only about carbon emissions, but it's about water usage, waste, and biodiversity, which is, it's really good to quantify things. The main takeaway was to shift the mindset from short-term to long-term is something that has been very important to me in my business as well, and to use KPIs that mirror those values and that long-term vision rather than short-term profit, which is the most common, in our society. In terms of regulation, there was a lot of talk about EPR and what is that going to be like for SMEs and bigger companies. We heard from Paolo Cunha from the European Parliament, who said it could be an opportunity for strategic moves and invest more into our local economies in Europe. And the Global Fashion Agenda identified 8 critical bottlenecks for circularity and how we can address those. How EPR also needs to reflect governance realities for each country, and how still the main focus should be on eco-design and the requirements around eco-design as well, not only towards the end of life of the product, but before. Another topic that was really interesting was about decarbonization and how it needs to be brought back to the people and how it's going to affect people, how changing systems will affect jobs, and how education and training needs to be mapped out for this transition. We heard from the H&M Foundation here, we heard from Arti Mohan from Satva, and basically the takeaway was that systemic change only sticks when it's built with and for the people. One of the most impactful talks actually was about climate change and the impact on women's health specifically, which was an amazing panel. We heard, the conversation was brought back to the people, and I think that's where the focus should be. We heard from the powerful Dr. Harshita and talking about the realities in Bangladesh and how the heat increasing is putting a lot of pressure on female workers. One of the phrases that really stayed with me from this session was how fashion shouldn't cost lives and healthcare should not be a luxury. And I think we tend to forget this, especially in the countries that are being more affected by climate change. It was amazing to hear about the organization Oporajita and how they're helping educating women. Other memorable mentions and panels that I really enjoyed was the talk with Pamela Anderson and Pandora, how we can reduce our own impact in the choices that we make, and also how to use influence to bring awareness to these topics that need urgent action. Another beautiful talk and very inspiring was to hear from photographer Amy Vitale and her calling again that a lot of the crisis we're facing is because of our disconnection with nature, and that we shouldn't forget that there is a world behind all this data that we need to protect and look after. The images were as powerful as the stories of the people and animals behind the images, and I think this is something that we need to keep in mind, that we are nature and we need to look after each other. So this was really lovely, very enjoyable and inspiring. And of course, one of my favorite parts of the summit was all the amazing suppliers that I met. There was a lot of beautiful next-gen materials and solutions, ranging from new ways to do eco-dyes, lab-grown silk, optimizations in terms of circularity, certifications, recycled materials. Another highlight was the Trailblazing prize winner, and it was a Japanese company who focuses on optimizing layout plans when you're cutting a garment to minimize waste at the pre-consumer stage. So now, onto the things that I missed. I missed the conversation about microplastics. There was only one session about it, practical session. I think this needs to be addressed, and it's a main problem. We did not see enough about the impact of microplastics in our health. That was a little bit disappointing. I'm hoping to see more of it in the future, especially after the CNN report that just came out last week about recycled plastic carpets that are being sold at Target and Walmart, and how it's impacting the makers already. Back to one of the main takeaways, that any initiative of decarbonization, recycling needs to be made with and for people, and keeping in mind the long-term health impact of these changes that we're implementing. It is not just about a report and about lowering those emissions. If we keep perpetuating the problems that got us here in the first place, we won't get very far. Another topic that we did not see enough of was the problem about overproduction. We didn't talk about disclosing numbers of overproduction, and that how at the core of it all we need to slow down as an industry. I think this was missing from the summit, and came up in some of the panels and Q&As, but not as a main topic. At the end of the day, we know that this is a main problem at the moment. So in order to lower our emissions, lower our impact, we still need to address overproduction. So I guess my main reflection about the summit in general was really positive. It was really nice to be in that space, not only in the context of having won the Visa Award, but just to really see the conversation shifting. I have to admit that having worked in the sustainable space for a while, you become a little bit more cynical. It's very frustrating to see things moving so slowly, but I'm so happy to see that the conversation finally is shifting from raising awareness, understanding problems, to understanding solutions, and really allocate the time and resources to this, understanding how these systems can change at every level, and also bringing people from every single stage of the value chain into the conversation to really see the challenges as opportunities and talking to each other and see how we can build this future and envision the solutions. So that makes me really happy, makes me really hopeful, and that we understand that it's no longer a luxury, it's no longer a necessity, but it's about survival of our businesses, of our world, and of ourselves. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I definitely had a really good time and there was a lot to unpack. I will link all of the resources down below, and if you like it, please subscribe and there'll be more of this content coming. Thank you so much and see you next time.